And I know that most people feel that way, that saw them and saw him and think that they were really like champions and amazing at creating, this very LA sound, but bringing in the old time ska stuff, which a lot of other bands obviously weren't doing. We kind of, many of us kind of switched into kind of a punky ska kind of, 90s sound. And to me, I always loved the trad stuff anyway. That's what I grew up on and I love. And they did it so well and creating something new with it, throwing in cha-cha and Cuban music and, a little salsa and just like having such a mixture of a good LA vibe with, everybody. I mean, they have like Filipinos in the band. They have like Latinos in the band. Like they kind of create this real LA sound to me as an English girl growing up that I just references trad ska, of course, very well, but nobody else does it like them.
I really like too how Greg, so they would, Greg was very much an advocate for saying like, you should dance to ska music, and him and Alex would demonstrate it, encourage people to dance, not just kind of like lose their minds, right? Yeah. But he did it in a way where it wasn't like he was inclusive. He wasn't really putting down like the punk ska stuff. It was more just like, hey, why don't you try this and kind of join us in this effort to like actually dance and move our bodies in a more like conscious way.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And, the scenes can get, especially, I grew up in the skinhead scene a little bit and the punk scene. People can be weird and not always, just to remember to be playful and to remember to have like a lot of love there. And he was able to cross over, a lot of people from the skinhead scene or the punk scene or the reggae scene or the ska scene. Like they loved them. And he was very good at like being inclusive with everybody. So yeah, it's just a huge loss. It was such a shock. I was in Japan when I heard the news and I was getting messages from friends, like, just on my like Facebook Insta message thing. And I was like, what's going on? Like, have you heard the news about Greg? I was like, no, what's going on? And it was just so horrifying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So back to NOFX. So you officially joined NOFX in 2015. Is that the case?
2016.
2016.
Mm-hmm.
So at this time that you're joining NOFX, so I don't know if it relates or connects to it, but you released your debut solo album like in 2015. I don't know if there's any connection to that. No, it's just okay. But the main thing though is that you were working on the Home Street Home with Fat Mike. That definitely led to it, right?
Well, Dancehall Crashers toured with NOFX many times in the 90s. We're on Fat Records. I'm very close friends with everybody at Fat. I sang on multiple tracks of NOFX stuff, like I'm an Alcoholic and Mattersville, on War and Arism and Coaster. So like for many years, I've been part of like the Fat Records, like I'm the girl singer for like, No Use for Name and Tony Sly. I sang on like tons of his solo material as well as No Use for Name. And I sang on High Standard track and I sang on Limp track and I sang on like, so I was kind of like the call girl for that, like, so, and hung out with those guys a lot, there was a big Fat Records scene that we used to hang out and go to all the shows and party together all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So we were close friends. But then, yes, I started working with Mike on Home Street Home a bunch because he had his motor studios in the city. And he would call me and just be like, I want you to come and try these vocals out. So I was workshopping his female characters with him. And that was like several years of that, where I would be like, he's like, okay, can you sing it? Like, I can't figure out if I want this character to be this way or this way. Can you sing like, that? And you're like, that's kind of how Mike sings, right? It was a really bad impersonation of him, but something like that, a little bit more like that. And, me just trying to determine, like, do you mean da 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 da? Going like, yeah, but change the third note to like, and you're like, what do you mean? So like working with him, trying to figure out what he actually was trying to sing to you. But then, so that's kind of, I could kind of sort that out with him, which was funny. And makes me a good collaborator with him in that way, because not everybody can understand what that means. But also, he would just be like, I want this girl character to be from Brooklyn, like try a Brooklyn accent, and now try her as a whiny teenager, and now try her as, an English with an English accent, because I grew up in England. So like, give her a Cockney accent, give her this. So he would kind of like play with these variations on these characters. So it was myself, Stacey D it was me and Stacey D, and Billy Bouchard, who was in a band called Water Dog many years ago, and also in Limp, and another band called The Affection. He was in Sam I Am for a long time too. It's a great songwriter and singer. So the three of us were doing a lot of that, and Spike as well was kind of coming in. But because I was workshopping with him a lot, and things were changing constantly, and then I would come in and play vibraphone, because I have a vibraphone, and then I would kind of work some keyboard stuff out with him, like, well, do you want this chord here, or do you want like a 7 chord? And he's like, what is that? It's a jazzy chord. I'm like, well, it's not really that jazz, but okay, yeah. So we were doing a lot of that. So he knew I played a little bit of keyboard, and then I would also help him get a lot of musicians in town, because I play with a lot of people in the city. So he'd be like, I need a harpist tomorrow, or I need a cellist, today, or I need, 2 trumpet players and a French horn, like super random stuff. And I was like able to kind of help him a lot of the times, like, hey, let me get, this person can do it tomorrow. Can we do it tomorrow instead of today, Mike? Because it's a little bit last minute, it's like, so workshopping all that home street home stuff. And then other people ended up re-recording most of our parts, like me and Stacey and Billy and Spike, like the actors that they were trying to get to do the actual performances, and things changed so many times, but at a certain point they were re-recorded. But in the meantime, yes, it meant that Mike and I were working together a lot and just having fun in the studio, and he knows how I work and I know how he works, and I can deal with all his funny way of communicating. He's pretty direct. He's not very when he loves it, he'll be like, yes, that's it, get really into it. But he's also like, no, not that note. Like, he'll be kind of mean. And I don't mind that. I just am like, fine, what do you want then? I'll just kind of sass him back. I feel like we're kind of like brother and sister or something. But some people might be more sensitive if you talk to them like that. And I don't really get offended like that. So,
and do you see any of the players get offended? Any of the people you'd brought in?
Oh yeah. Yeah, there was a few people that I brought in that were like, I just don't understand what he wants, he's really stressing me out, like because they would maybe be more like, they just, also he'll ask you to do something that's tricky and you're learning it on the fly, and then he'll say, no, change the 4th and 7th note. So you're going da 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 da, and he's like, no, change the 4th note and the 7th note. And so you're like, da na na na, no, change it to a different note. Na na na, no, change it different. Da na na, So it's a little bit intense, and you have to kind of be able to ride with it.
Yeah, and this is all without written music.
No, not written. He doesn't write.
I mean, just a lot of these, kind of session players, especially more classically trained instruments, like they kind of rely on sheet music, and so I could see them getting really flustered. Right.
So at some point he did have a couple of people in that were better at chart writing. I can do it a little bit, but I'm not great at it.
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't be doing any of that particular stuff. But I would eventually know to kind of communicate with people a little bit, like, here's the thing. He's going to send you a track or not. You'll be doing it on the fly, and you got to kind of learn what he's trying to sing you. Sometimes I would go in and kind of be a little bit of the translator. Like, no, what he wants is I think what he's asking you is to do this. So I'm saying, I mean, he's just fun. He's funny to work with. And And I don't think that's a bad thing. It's just his way of doing it. It's how he gets